In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the drive belt, motor belt on the treadmill. That's usually associated with slipping belt. A lot of times when you take the hood off, there's going to be a pile of rubber dust here. It'll be real obvious that the belt's slipping. So to start with that, what we need to do is take the tension off of our rear roller. So we're going to go to the back of the machine. We have two adjusting rollers, two adjusting bolts on each end of the roller. And I'm going to start. And once I have an engagement here, I'm going to loosen this counterclockwise 10 turns. Going to come to the other side. We're going to do 10 full turns also. Now once I have 10 turns, what that's done is it's slacked the belt enough because I'll need to remove the front roller from the treadmill. The next step is we'll have to take the tension off of the drive motor. In this case, it's going to require two 14 millimeters, so I'm going to hold it from each end. Once I loosen those bolts, now my motor is slack. I can remove my belt off of the drive motor pulley. Now on our front roller, we have two adjustments in the back, but on the front roller, we have an adjustment on this side, and we're going to have a fixed position. Some treadmills will have a fixed position in both. This particular one, we can adjust it right here. So I need an Allen key, and once in a while you may have to take this circuit board out if you can't have access to it. In this case, I can kind of fish it right in here, and I can loosen this up. If you prefer, you can take a Sharpie and draw a mark right here to line up where your front roller was. That's assuming it was in the right position to begin with. Now this is kind of a tight angle, but I can back this out. It's real common for these bolts here on this particular model to be bent. So if you start seeing that bolt wobbling up and down, you'll know that you're going to need to replace it. The size on these is normally 1/4 20. I've seen it with Allen heads, I've seen it with bolts or standard hex heads. You will see a variety, so you need to be prepared. A couple different wrenches, what you may run into. Once that bolt's out, you'll notice there's a wire here. This is for your, this is a ground screw to help discharge the static electricity off of the belt. So this just push that to the side. I'm going to lift that out, and then this is slotted in the frame. And as I pull this to the side, that will come right out. Now if you notice, this is your speed sensor right here. You want to make sure not to damage this. There's cases where you may have to actually remove this. Just loosen that screw, knock it out of the side, and we're good. Once in a while you'll find a plastic sleeve on here. That may need to be replaced. This particular one doesn't. So I'm going to take my belt out. I'm going to take my front roller out. As I have all this apart, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean down inside here. I'm going to sweep the, this is called the belly pan. I'm going to sweep this section out. I'm also going to clean underneath my walk belt. This is a good time to clean the machine up while you have it apart. If you see a lot of debris on your rollers, that's a good sign that your walk belt's starting to come apart and possibly needs to be replaced. In this case, our drive belt, there's a number series stamped right on here. And this particular one is a 189462. I have a new belt ready to go right here, 189462. So we have a number reference to go by to determine if we have the right size belt. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a dry rag and I'm going to clean underneath my walking belt. Again, what we want to try and do is get a lot of lint and debris. There is some form of a lubrication under here, so be aware you can get kind of dirty getting underneath this, but I'm going to clean out around the edges, completely underneath the belt. Just clean up all the old excess oil, dirt, lint, etc. And I'm also going to want to clean the back side of the belly pan. Clean underneath on the frame here, pretty much all the exposed sections. I want to get all that dirt out of there because that lint's not really good at all to be inside your machine. Now I'm going to take a shop vac and I'm going to clean inside the belly pan a little bit more thoroughly. And one final little trick that I like to do is I take a long screwdriver with a rag and I like to kind of clean in here just a little bit more thoroughly, get all the extra dirt and debris out. It's important to get that out because in the future, if you don't get all the rubber dust out, it's sometimes if you're trying to look to see if your belt's slipping again or worn and there's dust and dirt in here from a previous repair, you're not quite sure what's going on, kind of leave a false sign of what the actual problem is. Okay, we're going to hit it once more with a vacuum. Okay, so now we have our front roller cleaned, we have our belly pan housing cleaned, we have underneath our walk belt cleaned, and we have our brand new drive belt. So the first thing we want to do now that the belt is completely detensioned, our front roller's out, is we want to apply a form of lubricant underneath the walking belt. Most treadmills are going to require some type of lubricant. You can check with the manufacturer to see what they recommend. In this case, we're going to use some spray silicone that's specific for treadmills. And what I like to do, again, our front roller is out of the machine. So I'm going to take and I'm going to apply a pretty generous layer right directly to the deck. Once we have a layer on our deck, the first thing we need to do is install our front roller. So we take our new belt. Okay. Stick our roller back in. Insert our adjusting screw through the grounding wire, through the loop. Get ourselves started on our front roller. And I can hand thread this in most of the way. Now at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly gauge where the front roller position should be. Now the screw's coming out the other side of the roller pin and I'm going to get just enough get it started through the second section of the frame. Now I'm going to make this setting first because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up and I'm going to more or less eye it up as to the roller pin centered in the section here of the frame. And I'm going to do this visually. If you've made a mark already, you can line it up to that. But that assumes that it was in the right position to begin with. And I'll show you how to set that correctly at the end. So now that our front roller's in position, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up my drive belt. Now we loosened our motor pivot here, so our motor needs to be retensioned. So I have our belt centered on each pulley. Want to get this roughly squared up. Now in this case what I'm going to do is get my wrenches set, and I want to get a little bit of working tension on this bolt. What I like to do is I'm going to take a pry bar I'm going to get underneath my motor. I'm going to use that wrench to hold that nut. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to snug up this bolt. Now, I've got X amount of tension on this belt already, but remember I haven't adjusted my rear roller yet. So I'm going to take the rest of that slack up because there's a little bit of slop in this section right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the back of the treadmill, and our belt's still really loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly center this up just again by visual. I'm going to center it up in the back, and remember I loosened these 10 turns to begin with just as a reference point. So I'm going to put those back at 10 turns. Okay, so I have 10 turns. Now I have some tension to work with. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my drive belt tension, and this I'm going to do by flexing this belt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check my deflection of my belt, and I want approximately 45-degree deflection in this belt, which is what I have. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my walk belt tension, and what we want to look for here is about 2 inches of deflection. So in the center of the belt, I'm going to lift it up parallel to the deck, and I'm going to take my tape measure, and I'm going to put decent pressure upward, and I'm going to look for 2 inches, which is about what I have right there. So we've got our drive belt tension set, we've got our walk belt tension set. Now what we're going to do is make sure it's centered up. So I'm going to take my treadmill, and at this time I'm going to go ahead and plug it back in and install my key. And I'm going to start the treadmill up at a very slow speed. So I'm going to hit the start button. And we want to keep it really slow, keep our hand on the stop button in case the belt goes way off adjustment. We don't want to damage it. So once I see my belt's going to be tracking pretty straight, I like to use number 3 as a test speed, 3 miles an hour. I find that's a pretty decent speed, gives us some good movement. At the same time, it's not too fast to make any adjustments. Now right off the bat, I see that the treadmill belt's moving off to the left. I'm going to want to bring this over to the right side. Now remember, we want to keep our 2 inches here, and at the same time we want to keep our belt at the proper tension. So in this case, our belt's to the left. I want to bring it to the right. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen our gaps over here. I'm going to loosen this clockwise. It's going to let the belt come over, and I can offset that by tightening this side clockwise. So with those 2 movements, half turn loosen, half turn tighten, it's going to shift the belt over to the side that I want it to go. Also remember, we have an adjustment in the front. We have a fixed position, we have an adjustment position, an adjustment position, and an adjustment position. So if the belt's running cockeyed, I'm going to use that adjuster up there to take that adjustment out. These 2 right here are purely for moving left to right, and also for adjusting the tension. So we're starting to look pretty square here right now. I'm going to give that just a little tiny turn. Our belt looks like it's running pretty straight. So for our final adjustment, I'm going to hit stop. I'm going to go back and check things. First thing we're going to do is double check our drive belt tension, and in this case I'm going to check for my 45-degree deflection, which is good. I'm going to check my walk belt tension. This, I'm going to check for my 2 inches. We're good there. Our final test is to actually get on the machine and walk. I'm going to hit start in 3. Let the machine get up to pace. I'm actually going to get on the machine and start walking. As long as I don't have any slipping sensation, I know my treadmill, both of my belts are adjusted correctly. I'm getting a speed reading. I'm also verifying I haven't moved my speed sensor, and I know that my belt's set. That's it, your belt's set.